picture perfect family is what we try to be. Look closer, you might see the crazy things we do. This isn't make-believe, it's our reality. Just your average family trying to be normal and stay out of trouble, living a double life.
What's up? Taylor Thunderman, Season 4, Episode 25, Mad Max Beyond Thunderhome. This episode starts off at the thunderhouse with Max talking to a construction worker. Max says, alright. Max says, alright, construction, alright. Talking to a construction worker, saying, alright, they have all day to build his hot tub. He sends his parents to sea land, home of Flabby, the world's chubbiest whale. The construction worker says, I heard you can see his blubber from space. Hank and Bob return. Max says, they're home? I mean, yay, they're home. Hank says, yeah, because that chubby whale kept splashing him for no reason. Bob says, Hank, you kept eating all his sardines. Hank says he thought it was free sushi. Who's this? Max says, who's this construction worker? Max says, this is not a construction worker. This is his classmate Wendell. He just moved here. Hank says, Max, he looks old enough to be my classmate. Wendell Goldfarb, Metroburg High. Wendell says, Hank the Tank. Max says, reunion over, okay, take 5, Wendell. Hank says, looks at a picture of a hot tub, Max later. And Barb says, hot tub in your lair? Absolutely not. Max says, he's not building a hot tub. Colosso says, hey Max, is the bikini ready? For the hot tub, Hank says there's not going to be one, and gross Colosso. Colosso says, so he should return his other bikini? They say yes. Hank says, Max, he can't just do stuff like this without checking with them first. Max says, hey, if he checked with them all about everything, he would never have a boat. Barb says, what boat? And Max says, don't go. And Max says, don't go change the subject. Meanwhile, outside, Cherry says, why does Phoebe have to get the mail before Hank and Barb sees him? Before Hank and Barb see it? Is she hiding a report card? Phoebe Thurman got a bad grade. Phoebe says, Cherry, don't you joke about that. Ever. Phoebe says, no, she ordered something that Hank and Barb would never let her have. Then a male woman played by Kira Cothran's mom, Laura Cothran, says, sign here, initial here, and thumbprint here. Phoebe says she doesn't need a she doesn't need a retinal scan. Oh, you do. And she takes the retinal scan. Cherry says, what kind of bad thing did Phoebe order? Phoebe says, peppers. And Cherry says, Phoebe's throwing her life for, peppers? Phoebe says, she discovered different peppers do something to her heat breath. Hank and Barb says the peppers will mess up her powers, but she says they'll make her an awesome superhero. Here, let's see the Fijian face melter can do. Phoebe then eats the pepper, which makes her heat breath breathe fireworks. Cherry says, whoa, that's scary and festive. Phoebe says, I know. Bad guys won't know whether to scream in fear or say, Happy New Year. Cherry says, how's she gonna sneak those past her parents? Phoebe says, it won't be hard. They're young and Max. So when they're focused on him, she's completely invisible. So they sneak inside, as Hank says, another thing, Max, that hot tub is dangerous. Max says, oh please, how's a large tub of water filled with electrical equipment dangerous? Barb says, water and electricity do not mix. She plays a risky game every day just taking a shower. Max says, they never let him do anything a hover toilet, a cliff diving school, using the analyzer to build into a T-Rex. It's always no. Phoebe says, completely invisible. Max says, hey, Phoebe is, but Hank says, don't bring Phoebe into this. She's not even here. And Phoebe says, nah, 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 like she's a kid. Like, come on, Phoebe. She actually sticks her tongue at him because, yeah, she's like, ah, bro, you try to get me in trouble, but look, they don't even know I'm out. They don't even know I'm here. And she and Sherry leave. Yeah, Hank says, don't bring Phoebe into this. She's not even here. Yeah. And then Max, yeah. Then she sticks her tongue at him. But Max says, and then Barb says, the one he should be more like. They know. No, that he shouldn't. If Max is more like Phoebe, then this show would get really boring fast. Because the real reason I like Max is because he's nothing like Phoebe. Phoebe is sometimes an interesting character, but other times she's way boring. And if Max was just like her, man, this show would get tiresome. Hank says, but it's just kind of funny that Phoebe can just show up, but because the dude's distracted with Max, they don't even notice Phoebe sneaking away. So when Max tries to call them out on her sneaking around, they don't even know she's there. So they say don't bring her into it because she's not even there. Hank says, listen, young man, this is their house. So he has to follow their rules. Max says, fine. He's going to his lair. Barb says, he thinks he means their lair. Parents! Meanwhile, on the B plot, yeah, Billy is playing baseball with himself, saying, try to hit this fastball, Billy. Then pitcher Billy says, nice pitch, Billy. Nora says, Nora is lasering pizza boxes, saying, show yourself, pizza face. And she lasers a pizza box. Chloe is finally having the tea party that she said she wanted to have in last episode, saying, come on, Prince. And she calls her stuffed hippo Princess Bobo. Save some cookie for the rest of them. Nora says, what a day. Playing outside, having a blast, about to be hit by the Thunder Van. Thunder Van? Wait! And Chloe teleports out of the way. Hank says, beep beep kids. Like he's not even paying attention. He just says, he just looks at his phone saying, beep beep kids. Like this dude was president in the last episode. Now he's back to being a child neglector. Chloe teleports back and Billy says, what is Hank doing? This driveway is no place for a car. Billy, it's called a driveway and that's a van. I cannot believe I'm reasoning with Billy, the dumbest character on this show, but I am. Billy, the dumbest character on this show. Hank says, well, that's it. He keeps giving him parking tickets. So now he's gonna keep it in the driveway. Nora says, and Hank says, don't blame him, blame Johnny Law. Chloe says, now where are they supposed to find? Now they have to find somewhere else to play. Billy says he knows a great place in Madagascar, and he speeds off. Nora says Chloe meant in this country. Meanwhile, in the A plot, Max says, all right, Gideon. Yeah, this episode kind of shows. This episode has character inconsistencies because Gideon is still flirting with Phoebe and Barb in this episode and saying that Phoebe and him are going to prom despite this being aired after him getting a girlfriend. Yeah, this episode was produced probably before Can't Hardly Date, but since this episode aired after it, it just shows Gideon flirting with other women behind his girlfriend's back and trying to still ask Phoebe and Barb out behind his girlfriend's back. It's very weirdly production coded aired. Like literally. Yeah. Hank said, Max says, alright, Gideon, you sure no one came down here with that jackhammer? Gideon says, nobody, not even Barb, which reminds him, is she still into a guy with power tools? See? Told ya. He's trying to hit on Barb when he already has a girlfriend. Gideon, remember Sarah, your girlfriend? I don't think she would like it, you hitting on other women. Again, I know this episode was produced before Can't Hardly Date, but the fact that it aired after that episode, and in this episode, Gideon was hitting on Barb and Phoebe, despite airing episodes after he started his relationship with Sarah, just kind of shows, if I didn't know this information, I think Gideon's a two-timing player. But now that I know this episode was production coded before episode 16, he's still a two-timing player, but yeah. He's still a two-time player. I think I went back a scene. Yeah, I again, Gaines, like, so Max said, is Barb into guys, which reminds him, is Barb into guys with power tools? Because, yeah, Gideon, you have a girlfriend. Max says, remember when Gideon told him if he hit him when he goes too far? Gideon says he does. So Max hits him. And Max says, alright, let's do this. Thanks for his parents' stupid rules. He needs Gideon to help him build his hot tub. Gideon says, when he had enough of his parents, he goes to his grandpa Giddy's. Yep, the best character in Ditch Perfect is back in this episode. Still played by James Hong. So, he doesn't have any rules. Max says, yeah, it sounds awesome. His grandpa, / Pop, yeah, we know Pop, just sends him hand-on socks. These were his socks, the socks he sends him, these were knitted in World War II. Alright, he's sure the jackhammer is super silent? Gideon says, right, yeah, the guy at the hardware store charged him extra for the silent model. Then he turns it on, and it's really loud, and says he thinks he lied to him. Max says, turn it off, and Gideon says, what? So, and they keep jackhammering until Hank and Barb, of course, hear it, and Hank unplugs the jackhammer. And Max, of course, blames this all on Gideon, saying, Gideon, he told him his parents said no hot tub. Why would he try to form such luxury on him? Barb says, Gideon, will you give him it? Gideon says he will give her the whole day. Barb, he'd give her the whole day. Again, this was aired after he had a girlfriend, remember? So Barb hits him, and Gideon says, got it too far, and leaves. Barb says she thought they were clear when they said no dangerous hot tub in the lair. Colosso says, it's like King said to be sane. Max says, dude, not helping. Max says, Max, they warned him, and now he's grounded. Max says, they can't ground him. He's already lives underground. Max says, then he's undergrounded. Max says, yeah, but he's a superhero. Barb says, superhero or not, he lives under their roof. He has to follow their rules. Max says, maybe he just shouldn't live under the roof anymore. Max says, what is he saying? Hank says, Max, what are you saying? And Max says he said that he's moving out. Colosso says, no! Wait, can he come with him? Max says, definitely not. Colosso says, no! After the opening, in the A-plot, Max says, that's right, Hank and Barb, that they won't have to kick him around anymore with their stupid rule. Max Thurman doesn't live here anymore. Hank says, and just where does he think he's gonna live? Max says, he's moving into Grandpa Gay's no-rule penthouse. Gideon says, he is? And Max says, see. Gideon says, it's okay. Barbara says, you know what? Move out. It'll be a good learning experience for you. Hank says, yeah, maybe he will learn to wash his underwear. Max says, he won't need to. He'll turn them inside out. Barbara says, he'll be back by dinner time. Max says, no, he won't because he can take care of himself. Gideon, help him with his bags. Gideon says, sorry about Jackhammer. Meanwhile, Phoebe says, this is awful. Trey says, yeah, it's a little flaky, but ice cream will fix it. Oh, yeah, the Max thing. Yeah, that's terrible. She says, with Max gone, Hank and Barbara will all be in her business. All she wants to do is eat her peppers and Pete and unlock their spicy secret. Phoebe says, Trey says, woo, who, Caroline, yeah. Then Phoebe eats a Carolina dragon pepper. And it makes fire come out of her nose. Phoebe says, yep, that's definitely terrified bad guy, including her sciences. But Hank and Barb come by, so Phoebe has to hide her peppers from them. Barb says, Phoebe, she's flushed. Hank says, is she feeling okay? Phoebe says, yes, she's fine. She was just out in the sun. Barb says, this is why they have rules about wearing sunscreen. Phoebe says, no, as they start to put sunscreen and sunscreen spray on her. Phoebe says, Jerry says, is this what Phoebe meant by in her business? Phoebe says, yeah. Meanwhile, in the B plot, in Max's former lair, Chloe says, whoa, Max really did move out of the lair. Costa says, yeah, and he'll be back for him. He's just getting his room ready. Who am I kidding? He'll never see his Maxie again. Billy says he can't believe this huge room is going to be empty. Anyway, let's go find a place to play. Nora says, Billy, this is where they're going to play. Klaus says, no, they're not. This is still his room, so he'll decide what happens to it. Now, because he has a big heart, Chloe says, and a big booty. Klaus says, let him finish. He'll pick one of you Rudy Pooties to use the lair as their play area. Billy says, but they're used to playing together when they play. Right, Klaus says, one of you or none of you. That's his big booty offer. Billy says, let them think about it. Guys, I'll huddle up. He's thought about it, and it's more of a huge booty. Chloe says, this is about the offer. Keep up, baby. Again, yeah. Definitely. Again, they're really nailing her catchphrase in here. Nora says, if they do it Cosmo's way, at least one of them will get their dream playroom. Billy says, he just hopes... He just hopes Colosso doesn't turn into some weird competition. Cut to Colosso turning into a game show, like game, saying, who's ready to play? Share the lair! And Billy says, does anyone hear those voices? Right. Meanwhile, in the A-plot, at Grandpa Giddy's penthouse, Grandpa Giddy said, who, again, was the best character in Ditch Perfect. We all know. Says, this is his favorite room. It says, I'm rich and crazy. Max says, this is amazing. How can you afford such a cool place? Gideon says, Grandpa Gay used to be a big-time DJ. Max says, wait, he's DJ Party Face? Grandpa Gay says, you wiki know it? Max says, he appreciates them letting them move in here. Grandpa Gay says, he knows how lame parents can be. His are still driving him crazy as he points to his head. Of course, obviously insinuating that his parents are either dead or they inhabit his head. But Max says they must be 200. They must be like 200 times cooler than his parents. Gideon says, Gideon says there's no rule. Grandma Gideon says, that's right. Then a chicken on a bike falls off a no rules ramp. Gideon says, Grandpa Gideon says, he doesn't even know that chicken. Welcome to the running joke of this random chicken out of the blue showing up. Max says, this place is almost there. There's only one thing. A jet engine powered hot tub. Gideon says, a jet engine powered hot tub? That sounds illegal. He loves it. No rules. Meanwhile, outside the thunderhouse, Phoebe says Phoebe is still annoyed that Max is gone. If this was regular Phoebe, she would be happy. She would be throwing a party at this. But no, this is not regular Phoebe. This is Phoebe hooked on hot peppers Phoebe. So she hates this and wants Max back because her parent, like literally, if this was regular thinking Phoebe, she would be throwing a party at Max being gone. But because Phoebe wants to eat these random peppers, she for some reason dislikes it. That's why I'm saying this season's making Phoebe be really, really out of character. Like literally, Max is gone and she's what? Not happy? Phoebe doesn't even like him. Like literally, she'd be throwing a party right now because he's gone. But no, she's all upset about it and wants him to come back. Like, what's going on here, show? Like, literally, Max is gone and she's upset about it. Like, literally, Phoebe would be, literally, she wants to eat her pepper because, again, it just feels so random that they're just giving Phoebe random plots. Like, Phoebe says, Phoebe's now upset that, even though normally Phoebe would be throwing a party at this episode, Phoebe is now upset that Max is gone, saying that ever since Max left, Hank and Barb haven't given her a minute to breathe. This is the first chance she had to eat a pepper. Trey says, is Phoebe sure she won't get caught? She says, no, they're good. She told her parents, she told Hank and Barb she was meeting with her coding club, bases coding. Trey says, so which one's up next? Phoebe says, let's see, and opens the box to see the peppers are gone. Phoebe says, they're gone. Someone pilfered her peppers. Hank says, you mean these peppers? Yeah, literally, Hank and Barb, of course, caught on to her plan and caught her peppers before she could get at them again. But again, Phoebe would be... The main problem I have with this whole Phoebe plot is that she's not, like, literally, Phoebe would normally be happy that Max is gone. Like, literally. But for some reason in this episode, they make her a pepper addict. They make her have a pepper addiction. So, yeah. I think the peppers gotten to her and made her less fun. Because usually she would be celebrating Max is gone. But no, she's upset because Hank and Barb are now on her case and not his. But still, she'd be celebrating. Phoebe says, Hank, Barb, what are they doing in Coding Club? Barb says, drop the act, Missy. They know she was eating the peppers even though they told her not to. Phoebe says, okay, she has, but they're always telling her to eat her vegetables, so which is it? Cherry then takes the fall for Phoebe, saying, they're actually her peppers. As a kid, they always called her Peter Pepper because she loved peppers and looked like a boy. So she eats one and says, tasty. So, Phoebe, it feels like she swallowed fire. And then Cherry runs away screaming. Phoebe says, okay, they weren't cherry. But when she eats them, they make her heat breath more awesome. Barb says, Phoebe, you know the rule. You cannot eat spicy peppers. It's too dangerous. You know her great-grandmother, Matilda Jo Thunderman, had heat breath just like Phoebe. Hank says, one day she ate a chili pepper and burped into the Mojave rainforest in the Mojave Desert. Of course, that not really happened. The Mojave Desert is just the Mojave Desert. But Good trying to falsify history, show. Good trying to falsify facts. Creating false facts, show. Phoebe says, why are they worrying about her when Max is? And Barb says, Max is out in the world learning you can't fix problems by turning them inside out. No, he isn't. He's having the time of his life. Like, literally. Max is living in a no-rules society. Hank says, but Phoebe still lives here, which means she has to follow her rules. Barb says, so say bye-bye to the Pepper. Phoebe says, come on. At least let her have the Tokyo throat stabber. She's got to get Max back home. Again, Phoebe would not be doing this. She would be happily celebrating Max is gone. But because we need a plot, Phoebe, for some reason, doesn't like that Max is gone and wants him back. Like, I don't like that. I don't like how they're inconsistently writing Phoebe as a character just for a plot. She would not want him back. She would want him gone. Or that's what I believe. Cherry says, Phoebe, it feels like a stab in your throat. So Phoebe says, come on. And we never see Cherry again after this. Yeah, this is Cherry's final appearance in the episode. We don't know if she gets fixed or anything. Nah. Bye, Cherry. See you when you ever appear next. Yeah, we never see Cherry in the rest of the episode. So we don't know how Phoebe fixed Cherry's tongue. We don't know what happened. Meanwhile, in the B plot, in the game show, in Colosso's game show, Nora says, with all the extra space the layer has, she could put up targets just like this one all over the room. Colosso says, well, the ping pong storm means it's the end of the game. So it's the end of tell me your dumb idea round. Okay, that was kind of funny. Let's continue playing Share the Layer. Let's begin with the bribe round. Chloe says, what's a bribe? Because of course, this season has made me question, of course this little child wouldn't know what a bribe is. Colosso says, it's when you offer nice stuff. So he picks you as the winner. Chloe says, but that's not right. Colosso says, oh duh. Better get those bribes before it's too late. Nora says, guy. Colosso's just trying to turn them against each other. And it's working. She'll give him all her birthday money. Chloe says she'll give him her tooth fairy money. Teleports back with a big load with a bag full of cash. Which again, could have been tooth. But it was money. So, I have a little theory about this. That is not Chloe's tooth fairy money. That is money she stole from a bank. Because if you look at it, it's a brown bag with a $sign on it. And where do they sell those? At a bank. So, Chloe teleported out and robbed a bank. Nora says how many teeth did Chloe lose? But I don't think that's her tooth fairy money. I think that because Lily she's a 5-year-old child. How could she lose that many teeth? How could she lose that many teeth to get that amount of money? So I think Chloe robbed a bank, but they can't catch her. So yeah, the cops never caught her. Chloe is the Hiddenville bank thief. Wow, who knew my favorite character would rob a bank? But that's one of my theories. It's never been acknowledged on the show, but because literally, it was a brown bag with a green money sign on it. And where do you get those? At a bank. So, Chloe robbed a bank and everyone is none the wiser. Who is the wiser? Me, the reviewer of the show. I believe that Chloe robbed a bank. But back to the actual show, before we get too much in theories about where Chloe got how Chloe's a bank thief now. But yeah. Yeah, Nora says, how many teeth did Chloe lost? Again, as I said, that is not, she stole that money from the bank. Don't know how she was able to get in and out because, yeah, how could she, how did she get that brown bag? Billy says, who do I make this check out to? Claus says, who do you think? And Billy says, who do you think? Like come on, Claus, or you could actually said your name. Nora says, colosso. He just want to pick Billy's sports room. Billy says, don't pick Nora's unless he wants to get laser. She has bad aim. Nora says, how is this for bad aim? And Billy says, see? And Billy says, ow. See? She was aiming for Chloe. No, Billy. She was aiming for you. And Chloe says, if he picks her playroom, he can have lots of tea. Nora says, everyone knows Chloe's tea is made with toilet water. Chloe says, how can she reach the sink? Then they start arguing with each other as Colosso laughs. Meanwhile, they plot. Max says, isn't she something? Grandpa Gay says, he reminds him of his fifth wife. He still can't believe he married a hot tub. Gay says he doesn't know. He doesn't know. Is Max? Is he sure about the giant engine? Max says, "Oh, duh. How's it gonna be? It's gonna be supercharged." It's gonna be super turbocharged. Gaten says, what if the fuel leaks into water? Max says, will he quit worrying? You hear this guy? Grandma Gay says, barely. His hearing aids don't work. Max Gay says, isn't jet fuel flammable? And Grandma Gay says, no rule. Max can do whatever he wants. Phoebe says, hey guys. And Max says, oh, come on, lock the door, people. Gaten says, no rule. Any rando can walk in here. They want. Gaten says, you heard Grandpa K. So is she here to propose to him? His answer is yes. Again, dude, you have a girlfriend. Her name is Sarah. Stop hitting on these women. Sarah will obviously destroy you. She says she's not here for him. And Gaten obviously hears that as she is here for him, saying he's here for her too, boo. And Grandpa Gay says, Gaten's wearing her down. Again. He has a girlfriend, guys. Her name is Sarah. She says, Max has to come home fast. Hank threw out his back trying to pick up a muffin he dropped. Max says, she's lying. Hank hates muffins. He calls them healthy cupcakes. Phoebe says, okay, fine. When I'm at home, Hank and Bart are constantly watching her. She has no pepper to cover it and is covered in sunblock. Max says, well, he's not going back. And Grandpa Gay, he can do whatever he wants when he wants. So he says, wait. Can she do whatever he wants? Cut to Phoebe getting more peppers from male woman Lauren Coster. Yeah, I get Kirk. And I like this joke that Phoebe said. Lauren Coster says, hey, she didn't say that. Phoebe says, who do you think you are? Who she thinks she is? Her mother? Because, get it? Because she's played by Kira Costner's actual mom. Kind of funny, does this season said Kira Costner's parents in 2 different episodes. When we haven't even seen Jack Sparrow's parents in any episode. Kira Costner's parents are the only real life parents of a character that we've actually seen in the show. Grandpa Gay said, Grandpa Gay, this place is sick. Max said, she hasn't seen the best part. The door, bye! Gay says, Max, Phoebe can hang here wherever she wants. Grandpa Gay says, don't kick out his grandson's prom day. Phoebe says, they're not going to prom. Max says, oh, fine. Since she's clearly dating Gideon, she could say. Phoebe says they're not dating because Gideon already has a girlfriend. Again, she doesn't actually say that because, again, this episode made before Can't Hardly Date. This episode Grandpa Gay says, come on, it's hot tub time. Help him find Gideon, it's hot tub time. Come find his rubber ducky. Gideon says, Grandpa, it's in the rubber ducky room. Max says, since she barged in on his pad, he's gonna barge in on her pepper. He says, hey, that's for Himalayan hot butt. Max says, not anymore, no rules. And eats the pepper. That makes him fire. Don't tell anyone she saw that. Phoebe says the only thing she wants is the lithium lava pepper. It may be outlawed in 17 countries, but the only thing she sees in this, but it's welcome in her belly. Phoebe then eats it, and but then she spruts out fire, which makes the hot tub's engine explode, causing the hot tub to catch fire. Max says, oh, it's a beautiful baby. Phoebe says, don't worry, she'll put it out, but the heat breath is affected by the fire, causing it to become fire breath, which then destroys the hot tub more. Max says, oh, his beautiful baby again. Phoebe says, alright, Max, try something wrong with her heat breath. Yeah, of course it is. You just ate a pepper. You've been eating peppers all day, Phoebe. Why do you think your heat breath will work? But Max is still... try his. But Max is still farting fire. Max says, something's wrong with his everything. Meanwhile, in the Beatpot, Costa says he's made his decision. He used all his bribe money to build the lucky builder's playroom. Chloe says, please, a tea party. Billy says... And Colosso says, lucky winner is him. Welcome to Colosso World. Billy says, whoever, and Louie, it's pictures of pictures from old episodes. Like some of the pictures in Colosso's thing are like Colosso in the coffin from Happy Halloween. Colosso in the wrestling suit from Nothing to Lose Sleep Over. And Colosso as a doctor. Yeah, that's the episode. Chloe says, I don't get it. How'd they lose? Nora says, because Colosso tricked them into fighting each other and stole their money so he could build a stupid rabbit shack. Colosso says, correct. Now get out. Now get out. Nora says, guys, they should have walked out the second he only said one of them could leave. Billy says, yeah. What good is it place if they can't play by themselves? Nora says, she knows something. Colosso says, what are they doing? They aren't gone. Nora says, because they're about to play a new game. Trash the lair! And they start destroying everything to end the B plot. Colosso does say some things, but the most thing is that they destroy everything. And Colosso said he doesn't deserve this, but he does. But he does destroy everything. Meanwhile, in the A plot, Phoebe says, and that ends the B plot story. Meanwhile, what are they going to do? Max says, stop asking what they're going to do. Grandpa Gay says, hey, Max, turn the hot tub down. It's very hot in here. Max says, hey, he knows. They're working on it. He says, if the fire reaches the jet engine, the whole place is going to blow up. Max says, he thinks she's exaggerating a bit. Then, a little. The fire reaches the jet engine and the place starts to blow up. Max says, she was saying. Phoebe says, she's got to be something in the fridge cold enough to get their freeze test working. Max says, oh yeah, they drink milk, but then they spit it out. Max says, his was chunky. Phoebe says, it's because they was spoiled. Grandpa Gay scratched out the explanation rate and just wrote, no rules. Max says, there's got to be something cold enough. Only in the freezer are these fish pops. Phoebe says, where are fish pops? And Max says, they are frozen fish on a stick. They lick the fish pop and Phoebe says, hers are looking at her. And Max says, it's so scaly. Phoebe, let's try to use her freeze breath. And she uses her freeze breath, but it's not cold enough. Phoebe says, Max, try it. But Max again farts fire. Max says, don't tell anyone. Phoebe says, Max, they're out of time. If they're out of time, they need to evacuate everyone. Max says, Phoebe gets the gate. He'll try to stem us off. Phoebe says, "What?" And Grandpa Gay and Gideon show up. Gideon and Grandpa Gay show up in fire outfits, and Grandpa Gay uses a fire extinguisher to extinguish the fire. Max says, "Grandpa Gay did it." Gideon says, "Lucky his grandpa has one rule." Grandpa Gay says, "Always have a fire extinguisher ready when there are no rules." Phoebe says, "Sorry they won't blow up his luxury condo." Grandpa Gay says, "Oh yeah, it's not the first time." Max says, "Phoebe, he's beginning to wonder if Hank and Barb were right about them needing their rule." Phoebe says, "What tipped him off? The jet fuel or when he started fire?" Max says, "She said she wouldn't say anything. She wouldn't tell anyone about that." Max says, "Want to go home?" Phoebe says, "Want to go home?" Max says, "Please, sure." Yes, please. He's out of his underwear. Back at Thunderhouse, he says, "Hank, Barb, they apologize for not listening to them." Barb says they're not gonna say we told you so, but we're gonna do this. Parents! Max says, "From now on, they'll show designs for all of his dangerous devices." Max says, how about you don't design any... Hank says, "How about you don't design any dangerous devices?" Max says, "Fine, but he's keeping his boat that he definitely does not have." Barb says she's glad that her babies they finally learned their lesson. But they know something. How long is Grandpa Giddy gonna stay here? Phoebe says, "Oh yeah, just long enough for his penthouse to stop smelling of fish pops and jet fuel." Grandpa Giddy says, "Or longer, no rule." Then a chicken rides down on his bike and crashes. Rides down on the stairs and crashes. Grandpa Gay says, "Seriously, whose chicken is that?" to end the episode. So that was Max Beyond the Thunderdome. Really good episode. I liked Grandpa Gay. Again, Phoebe was just so a character in this. Like, why wouldn't she be celebrating Max is gone? Colosso tricking Billy and Nora was kind of funny. And, yeah. And again, Kira Costner's mom being in the episode was kind of cool. Gideon being weirdly in love with both Phoebe and Barb despite dating Sarah was kind of a character. And yeah. So next we got the 100th episode produced. So next we're going on the 100th episode the 100th episode of the Thundermans that was production coded. Technically, the show doesn't have a 100th episode that aired, but next episode, the Thundereth, was the 100th episode produced. So the next episode has Phoebe and Mac going for their 99th save as a team. Even though that is impossible because Phoebe and Max have not even been a team for that long. So how they're on their 99th save? That's what confused me about this plot. So once Barb and Hank tell them about that they that they made a movie about their 100th save, Hank and Phoebe and Max decided they want a movie about their 100th save. So, and this episode also has Jack Griffo's at the time girlfriend, Paris Barlek, who played Skylar Storm on Mighty Men. Yeah, that was his girlfriend at the time. I think, yeah, after Ryan Newman, that was his girlfriend at the time. Jack Griffin appeared on her show, Alexis and Katie. So, yeah. And also, Nico Greetham from Power Rangers Ninja Steel also appears in the next episode. And also, we got another Sharknado star on the show. I know in Day Exceptions, I mentioned, season 3, episode 12, Day Exceptions, I mentioned how Max and Allison's actors were on Sharknado. Well, in next episode, when we get a shot of Hank and Barb's movie, the actors that play them, one of them is the main character from Sharknado Ian Ziering. Yes, the main character from Sharknado plays actor Hank Thunderman. So now we got our third Sharknado actor in this show. Is this just a Sharknado universe? A Thundernado? But anyway, so the big plot, Chloe, Hank, and Barb see that Chloe, Billy, and Nora see that. Yeah, it's also this weird shot of Chloe in the image, like when you see Chloe, and she feels like she's too small, too big for the Thunderman's chair. For a little chair, she's too big for an almond chair. So Billy and Nora decide that they want this ice cream. Hank and Barb tell them to wait, but they don't. And then they don't wait, and then they eat it. And when Hank and Barb tell them they want to buy it, they have to tell them the truth that they already pre-bought it. And of course, yeah, hilarious too. So now we only get 2 more episodes. We only got, 2 more episodes left after the next episode. Wow. I'm just skimming through this show. I'm almost done it. OMG. I'm almost done this series. I'm sad to think about. But anyway, that's it for this video. And see you next time for the 100th episode in production order, the 100th.